What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Mayrand podcast. Today, my guest is again Paul Bergeron. For this episode, we'll start off right where we left last week. It was really good talking with Paul. He's super interesting and has a lot of insight in the ski industry in general. In this episode, we talk about injuries, traveling to Europe, switching to filmmaking, working on X Games real ski projects and winning 2 medals. Then a big feet injury that left him in a wheelchair for over 6 months. Big thank you to this episode's sponsors, Access Boardshop, J Skis, Treefort Lifestyles, Dic Anns Restaurants, and Planks Clothing. Let's go. So after that pinnacle we were talking about of like going to Sammy Carlson Invitational, what happened after that? Did you get was that your first knee injury?
My first knee injury was in Mammoth really early. I think it might have been...
Was it the fall after that?
Yeah. So Sammy was in the summer, so the year after, the fall after, we went to Mammoth for early season, and I blew my knee the first day, I think.
Yeah, that's a shitty turn of event. Like you're kind of going off at your peak, and then right as the next season comes along, and it's kind of the worst timing ever to have it on like early season because your whole season is blown up basically.
Yeah, and at this point I had some sort of expectations of chances on going onto the Canadian team because I was kind of in contact with, I skied with JF a lot. Phil, that was on there at the time as well, and I knew JF Cuson a bit. So I was kind of on the verge of, if I did good that year, maybe I could have gone on the team. That's a speculation, but I was at that kind of breaking point where I was there and maybe it could have happened. And I blew my knee, I think, first day or second day in Mammoth that year. The first day of skiing in the full year. Then I was set off for a bit. The next year I came back after my knee injury, which healed kind of fine. And then I did a little urban trip. I don't remember with who, but I kind of tore my hamstring, and that lasts for a long time. After that, I went to that same year, I went to Tanner's Invitational on that big hip, and I couldn't land switch. I couldn't do much, and that lasted for a long time. When I tore my hamstring after that.
So it was like 2 seasons in a row where...
Kinda, yeah, exactly. I blew my knee. I came back from it fairly good. Landed switch in a tranny, and then I hurt my hamstring for so long. So it's kind of 2 seasons where I was kind of off, So, yeah. At this point already, 2 seasons off was big at that point because things were moving fast with teams, and it was the verge of it.
Yeah, and especially if you don't have like really financial support from companies or anything.
Exactly. I probably got like $3,000 at that point from like my sponsors. Like, what are you gonna do with that? Not much.
You can tough out the winter eating peanut butter sandwiches, but
you can't even fly out to 2 different places.
Yeah.
Like, how are you gonna make? And that's one thing I like. Sponsors ask a lot for what they ask for, especially now, I feel like. After that, there was a demo tour, the Inspired Tour.
Yeah, tell me about that, because that's something special. That's really a great move for you guys to go out to local resorts. Well, I'll let you explain it, but yeah, it's something unique that has not been done ever since or before that, I feel.
No, we had a great mentor that still is a mentor of Eric Heiberg, which planned for Phil, Henrik, and I to go around the United States and some resorts in Canada as well. And that was the Inspired Demo Tour, it was called, and we did 60 ski resort in 5 days, I think. So every day we'd drive in a van to some ski resort out east and make our way out west. And we saw all the smallest places, I think, in the U.S., even like old trash dumps that were now covered with snow, and they put a lift there, and like small places that were fucking weird. But the demo tour was incredible, and I think it showed to lots of kids, and it created even the kids that were 16 back then, they'll remember that when they're 40, you know, because they were not flipping on me, but Henrik and Phil were there, and Henrik had just won, like, we did almost half of the tour, 30-something days around the United States in the East, doing the smallest parks possible. And Henrik flew out to the X Games and won. You know, so then he flies back with us, and he's like the X Game winner, and he goes to the smallest local hills. So, man.
And the craziest thing about that, I remember it because we were filming for Solomon Frisky TV episode at the same time, is that's the year he did his nose butter triple.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing it the night he did it, and I was like, man, what? Like, that guy is special, because not only is that trick insane, but I know for a fact that he wasn't in Europe training on jumps. He was with you in the Midwest on a shitty park.
Yeah. I don't even know if Henrik fell doing a trick for the first time. I feel like he pictures it in his mind like he's done it for, you know, I feel like when you're Henrik, you have such a awareness of where you are in the air.
And that behind the scenes video with Tanner, you know, when he's like priming him to do it, you know, in his speech that there's no doubt that he's gonna land it. He's saying that
no doubt
it would be cool to win the event without having to do a triple, and he's thinking about the culture. It's not about if he knows. He's like, yeah, what, I know I can land it, and you're like, well, it's still a nose butter triple, but he's like, he has so much confidence in his skill.
Yeah. But there's a major difference between a nose butter triple and a triple 14 mute, in my opinion.
In what sense?
Even both might be hard. Nose butter triple, even though it's a triple, it's something that's so unique and pointy towards I don't even know if no one has ever done it since. I don't think so. See, so he's done something once. He landed it, he won with it. And that tells you how unique this was, because I'm pretty sure everyone was like, dude, you're fucked in the head. Like, honestly. Not a lot of people can do what Henrik does on a daily basis.
And I've never been really good at jumps, but nose butter seems like a really risky thing. Like if you cut an edge or...
I've never been able to do it. You know, lots of tricks I've never been able to do. And, you know, JF Houle, master of nose butters with the stiffest skis back then. Corey Vanuler too. It's certain tricks are for certain people, I guess, but Henrik can do it also.
Yeah.
He's out of the categories.
So, sorry, I branched off at the demo tour. You were saying, Henrik got back from winning X Games. How was that skiing with the kids?
Everyone was so hyped, you know, and I'm pretty sure it seemed unreal for these kids to be with that guy at this point. It wasn't like he was Brad Pitt, you know, but kids were flipping out, and they didn't even understand. As much as the parents that are there are like, who the fuck is this guy wearing the biggest clothes I've ever seen? They see him as like a bum, basically. You like, do you know what this guy did like 3 days ago, man? There's no problem there. This guy is a fucking thing. He's a legend. So that's one thing that's mesmerizing about Henrik too, is he doesn't care, man. I think even back then, like, he came to my house on he was at my parents' place on Christmas with Émile Bergeron, his filmer, one year. And he had bought like the biggest jeans, man, for someone that's 400 pounds at least. And he was so stoked to wear those in a fucking, you know, that's the type of guy he is. If he likes something, he's going to push it to the max. And people are going to recognize him or not, but he's going to make a difference in anything he does.
Yeah, that's something special about this ski culture, where we have kind of our own world of idols that if you go out of the industry, like no one knows who they are. Like and there's a few guys that branch out of it into the mainstream, like Tanner Hall. If you say that name, then people know who we were talking about. But yeah, I had the same kind of experience writing Avila. And like when Tom Wallish was blowing up, I think it was the refresh year, and they were doing a urban trip in Montreal, Quebec, whatever, and they had taken a day off to write Avila. Man, you should have seen that. All the kids were riding behind him, like not stalking him, but just like mesmerized. Like Tom Wallish is here.
Yeah,
and you would have thought someone from Hollywood was there.
Yeah, that's what's great about skiing, though, because you can go ski anywhere, and most of the pros are not like superstars in their mind at all. I don't think I've ever met someone that was like a superstar in their way of acting, you know. Especially in skiing, you have respect for. That's what's cool, though, man, because you can be the richest person, you can be the poorest person, but if you ski together and you link up together and you feel good together, there's no difference whatsoever. When you're skiing with someone, it's just like that moment. And that's something that's super special, I think, because skiers respect skiers. I hope the most they do, you know. I've always respected people, I think. But that's something special in skiing because it's really a bubble of a sport that used to be super kind of undergroundish. Now it's at the Olympics, but I don't think it's super understood yet still from the mainstream. Not. You know, like if my grandma watches a slopestyle contest, I don't think she'll understand any more than before it was in the Olympics.
Yeah, I still have friends who are not clueless and they're just not that into skiing.
Yeah.
And they heard the podcast and they were like, yeah, what's slopestyle?
Yeah.
Unless it's still misunderstood.
Yeah, but if you say Usain Bolt, anyone knows who it is for what and for what.
For skiing, you still need to say like, hey, you know Shaun White?
But
for skiing,
true.
It's. I feel like it's stuck at that stage for like the past 10 years. Something I'm curious about is you had 2 years of injuries back to back. At one point, you were, with Salomon, with Oakley, and then it seemed like those years changed everything. And then after that, you were with First Drop and Apple.
Yeah.
What was that transition like for you? As you were saying, you were kind of at the peak of your skiing, and then I guess there wasn't much sponsor support during those injuries because going out of them, you were with different companies.
Yeah, at this point, I think it was kind of clear that I was on a down path in my mind, not what I would do in the future, because I traveled to Europe after quite a while, and that was, in my opinion, the best part of my skiing, even though it might have not been the most productive, but it led me to do stuff that I really enjoyed more, I feel like, in the end. So, I have no regrets, and yeah, of course, it's annoying to be hurt and to see that you can't do much more than what you're doing right now, but to me, of course, it was kind of a downer for a bit because I always wanted to progress more. But in the end, I'd say that, it led me to the best places that I've could have been, and that's Europe for me.
And now it's time for a first sponsor break. Dic Anns is a family-owned restaurant chain with 12 locations in the Montreal region, and I'm really stoked to have them as a sponsor. If you've never been, you have got to try it out. Their one-of-a-kind hamburgers have been favorites of mine since I was a kid. They've started selling products like their legendary sauce, and they have a lot more coming out soon, so be on the lookout for that. Support companies that support skiing. Support Dic Anns restaurants. When you talk about Europe.
Yeah, I traveled I traveled to Switzerland to meet up with some friends, and I stayed there for quite a while. I'd say I stayed there for almost 6 months, going around Switzerland and France. And I stayed, one of the guy that I met randomly told me that I could stay at his place in Switzerland, in dans le Valais, And I was like, all right, sure, yeah. And I stayed there, and he had a car, and we traveled a bit everywhere, and we did lots of stuff, and with Nico Vignier as well. And that part wasn't as relevant for anybody, especially the sponsors, for me. But at this point, it wasn't really a question for me. Like, I didn't care. I just felt like I was living the life at this point more than I've ever did in the US or anywhere else, because I really felt like I was traveling to do my own stuff and not going to somewhere for a contest, for example. So yeah, after I blew my knee, it took like a fair amount of 2 years to come back to a point where I didn't have to think about my knee anymore. And I was definitely out of the competition, but I went to Europe, and that's when I felt like I fell in love with skiing again.
What year was that? 2014, 2015?
The BNE Invitational, I went to a first one, and after the second BNE, I'd say I stayed there. Candide was there, and I ended up going to his place at La Clusaz for a fair bit of time. And I got the chance to ski with him a lot, and yeah, that was almost towards the end of my skiing career. Not even career at this point; it was just towards the end of skiing period. And I got to ski with the person that I was inspired the most by. That it was a dream. Like, honestly, if you're in any sport, any type of work, and you have someone higher that you look up to, that was my person at the very, very top. So I feel like I was lucky enough as a skier to go there to La Clusaz and ski with him and see how the projects that he were involved into worked out. And yeah,
well, going to La Clusaz to ski with Candy Tovex him is pretty much the dream of so many skiers. It's like,
I don't understand
incredible.
Still. I really don't understand. I feel so lucky because I didn't ask for it, really. It was more of a chance. But still, I don't know how this all lined up, to be honest.
And do you have any footage of that time, or it was all like just skiing for fun, nothing filmed?
No, I have some footage, but definitely it was more of being there, man. Like, we didn't film anything. Most of the time we were 2 or 3 with Aziz's friend, and it was really a ski time for a skier that loves skiing, you know.
Enjoying the moment?
So much, especially coming from here. Like, it's insane. There's nothing to be thought about it. I was just blown away the entire time. And try to follow this guy. He had a full pallet of Carlsberg beer in his garage, like a full pallet. I don't know how many beers that is, but every morning I'd take 2 beers out of the pack, and I'd drink 2 beers on the ride way up, because that would loosen me up, because otherwise I would not be able to follow him at all. Like, and almost one of the biggest crashes in my life was try to follow him. I had super soft skis, and I just blew out, and going straight down on a bumpy hill, I blew out, just exploded. So yeah, I had to loosen myself up a bit, because that guy is fucking insane. The fastest for sure.
Yeah, the terrain he rides at La Clusaz looks pretty intense to ride. Plus, at the speeds, I was looking at Few Words, the movie project he had done. And he has a session on jumping a big step up, and you see the in-run shot of him getting a speed, but it's really a bumpy terrain, and it looks so intense just to go down that.
Yeah, it is. And like, for example, Candide will go first, and you'll glide above the top of every single bump. You'll try to do that, but you'll hit the bottom of every single bump. You know what I mean? Like, you're not gliding at all, and he has that way of being light on his skis. That's unique for sure. Not many people, not nearly as a lot of people can ski like him.
One thing that I wanted to talk about is that towards the end of your career, you branched off into filmmaking, which is what you're doing nowadays as a living. And it's something that you always had as something that you were passionate about. Like from the first time I saw you, you already knew how cameras worked and how editing works. Like it's not something that came in later on. Like you always had that. One of the first big projects that you worked on in skiing is HOULIGAN, the JF Houle movie in my mind. Was that the first one, or is there something for you before that?
Well, we've always had a camera. We've always had, I don't recall what year it was, but Movie Maker, as soon as we were able to get that on the PC, was we were on it, you know. So we've always been creative with our footage, and we've always had the chance to have a camera around, even if it wasn't me, it was someone else. That Gam Mascot, man, from back in the day, he had a GL2, and back then we were blown away. We're like, this is the best camera ever, man. I can't believe this guy has that, and we're here. Yeah, we were creative with whatever we had to do.
And now it's time for a second sponsor break.
Planks is a British outerwear brand founded in the French Alps. Yeah, you can ski in the UK, but you probably wouldn't. But these guys are still passionate about skiing, and as someone from Quebec, I definitely relate to that. They don't just make high quality, good looking gear that's affordable. They care about the free ski culture too, running grassroots events and sporting skiers that are some of my favorites like Woodsy, Lupe Haggerty, and the Real Skiffy crew. Make sure to check them out at planksclothing.com. Support companies that support skiing. Support Planks Clothing.
So HOULIGAN, how did that movie come about for you? Because it was a big passion project for JF. How were you involved with it?
I'd say that I started to make friend with JF when I was maybe around 16 or 17. We started because, again, JF was kind of a legend. Even more so that he was from the area and he was in the biggest movies and he did backcountry and all this stuff. For me, JF was another candide, in my opinion, in the Quebec scene. He seemed so far to reach because he was with the best at all time. He was the best, man, too. He was so great. He still is, man. But when I came friend with JF, it slowly creeped up, you know. We skied together, we skied together, and then at some point, I don't even know how I got to make the HOULIGAN project with JF. I think it was just our friendship growing up and our trust towards each other going in that direction. But JF is a guy that keeps his stuff in hard drives, and he forgets about it, but at least he keeps it. And his brother as well has a lot of footage. They're from Drummondville. They used to do insane urban stuff, and back then, like crazy stuff. And they've always had that notch, like to go over everybody else in being insane kind of. And JF is exactly that. Like, if he has an idea in mind, it's gonna happen or not, but it's gonna be a battle in his mind. And HOULIGAN was kind of that, you know, like he had this bank load of footage, and it's like, yeah, dude, your career is insane, but how are we gonna display that? And at this point, I wasn't working so much, he wasn't either, so we took about 6 months to go through this in the summertime. Trying many different ways, angles to look at it, and we finally managed to do something, you know, that at the time it still is an amazing project, but I see now that I was in my first years of producing stuff and editing stuff. It's an amazing thing, you know, but there was a few flaws that I think we learned throughout, that it's not always easy to tell a story. Like you may have the footage, you may have an idea, but when it's to put it on the table, it's so hard to do. JF is good for that because he has 1,000 ideas, each better than the other. So it's just a pool of ideas that you have to put together. And HOULIGAN was exactly that. It was just a great great time, man, to work on something. Like, definitely the hardest and the longest project I've worked on. I was younger and I didn't have the skills that I have now to do this type of stuff. But we got recognition for that, JF as well. Everyone was happy, and it shows well how good of a skier. And
yeah, well, you managed to tell the story in a really nice way, and plus in a short and concise way. Like, there's so much stuff to talk about for him, and I remember just his intro. Like, the movie is what, like 20 minutes long in total?
Yeah, I think so.
You managed to tell it all in a great way, because the last 5, 6, 7 minutes are ski porn. So basically the whole storytelling is the first half. And I remember it was really, like, maybe you look back at it now and you would change maybe some stuff, but I thought it was really original for the skiing world of, like, telling a story. I don't know, it was concise. Like, the whole first 3 minutes, you learned about his career, what he liked, like how he was brought up. There was a montage with shots of him growing up, and it told a story that could have been way longer, but in a nice short manner.
Yeah. And that was kind of the battle, because we could have made this thing 60 minutes long for sure. But we managed to do it. And I think JF and I work really, really well together. Although sometimes it might be kind of we speak over each other, not so often, but when we have a point to get across, we're both going to try to get it across as much as we can and to understand each other, which is not always easy. And I've worked with JF after Hooligan on his X game, and that was, to me, even harder of a challenge, because then you get 2 months to film the craziest segment you've ever done, basically, if you're willing to win. Then again, the passion of JF drives everything of that. And I don't know if you've been around JF, but like, he gets angry pretty often, but he's not angry about anybody else than himself. And once you get to know him, you're like, okay, yeah, he's been trying for 50 times now. He's fucking pissed. He might slam his skis on the fence, but it's a battle between him and the camera, and that's incredible to become a skier and to see that behind the lens, because he will never let go. And JF, he's 32, 33 years old, 34 maybe. Sorry, JF, if I put you a bit older than you are, but he fights so hard. And once again, that's something that in skiing, it's crazy. And JF doesn't get as much recognition as he should, even now, because he does his own thing and he's passionate about it. He has the same mentality going into it, even though the tricks might be a bit smaller, because now he's working and he doesn't want to break both of his legs, but that's fair enough.
Yeah, and there's something about urban skiing when it might be for some setups about, your natural talent, being able to do a certain trick. But for other setups, it's really about how hard are you willing to fight for it. Like, it might take you 60 tries, 100 tries. I've been told that story from a couple people, is that for his real ski, you guys went to the sixth kink in Shawinigan.
Yeah.
And that he tried something for, I don't know how many
3
hundred
days.
For 3 days, he tried the sixth kink.
Never got it.
But still, to not get it during 2 days and say, oh yeah, I'll go for a third day, is really like, okay, he's not giving up.
And we drove back every time back to Stoneham. So, it's an hour and a half drive up, an hour and a half drive down. And the hour and a half drive back was never fun at this point, because we never got the shot. And for Jay, I remember, man, because he's so on his emotions, and man, I respect that so much. But when we left, he was like, I quit skiing. Of course it wasn't be true, but that tells you how much it is everything, that you don't get a trick and you think about quitting everything. This is a passion that's incredible to see, even though it's not always funny. to be there when that happens, but it's part of the deal. You don't get a shot, man. We've been there for 3 days. Yes, you've been hiking too, but there's the whole team. Like, it's easy for us to be at the bottom, but we feel kind of the way he is feeling, because we are skiers as well, you know. And so if you hire a dude that never been around skiing, he's not gonna understand why you want to do that three days in a row. But
yeah, he'll be like, well, it's not working, let's do something else. And for him, there's an emotional attachment where it's like, no, I'm not giving up. I have to do it.
I don't think I'm pretty sure that JF has not even 5 spots that he can count that he left without a shot. Not even 3, not even 2. Probably not a lot of spots. And that was crazy to see. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys really went all out on that segment.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a bit too intense in my knowledge of these things, but to me it really stood out that, okay, well, you guys are from Quebec City, and first off I noticed, you drove all the way to New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Which is what, 8-9 hour drive, 10 hour drive?
Yeah,
so it's like you're going all out to get what you want.
But remember that JF is around the snowboard community a lot as well. He knows everyone in the snowboard industry in Quebec. Pretty sure everywhere, but in Quebec, it's all the family of urban riders, whether as skiers or snowboarders. So we talk to each other and we know kind of what's going on. And JF is the same. There's a certain point where in urban you have to go all out, and the spots are a huge part of that. And so if you're from Quebec and you keep doing the same spots over and over, you're gonna be outdated pretty quickly. But JF is always on the tip of the iceberg, the bottom of it, where you don't see the spots, or you've never seen this spot or that trick on this spot. So he would not go to a spot to do the same trick as the guy that did last year, the same thing, you know, like he's always ahead of that. And there's a lot of people like it, like all the urban riders that are on top. That's like, you're not going to do the same shit as the dude that last year. So JF is always minded, and truly sometimes as a friend more than a filmer, it seemed dangerous, I say, where I can picture myself doing that, but I would never do it. But I know how it feels a bit, kind of. So I'm like, I don't even understand how you're going to do that. So at this point, I can tell you to go and to do it, but I don't understand. Like at some point, JF is too crazy, and same with Émile this year.
Yeah. And now it's time for another sponsor break. J Skis is a company based out of Burlington, Vermont. Their business model of making limited edition graphic skis that are sold online directly to consumer is super dope. As a fan of original graphics, I love it. They put a lot of effort into making great skis, but also in making them look super good. I finally had the chance to try out my vacation skis this spring, and I gotta say, I love them. They were so playful that after shooting a jump, I had to go in front of the lens and hit it myself. Knowing how much time and effort Jason Leventhal and his team put into each ski they produce, I'm really looking forward to their upcoming releases. Support companies that support skiing. Support J Skis. And JF wasn't in the beginning of his career at that time.
Not at all.
You know, he wasn't a young kid with like a reckless kid. A trick that really stood out to me was his butter 6 on, which I don't think has ever been done before or since. Like it's a crazy trick to do on an urban feature.
And the switch right 2 down the vertical wall.
What's your craziest shots in your opinion from his video?
All of it. Honestly, this trip was fucked up. If, for example, let's say you're a freelancer and you're like, you get the someone tells you, hey, do you want to go shoot this for 2 months? It's impossible. You can't do that, but you have to be in it to understand it. And so every shot is particular in its own way, you know. I like for myself bigger drops and bigger trannies and stuff like that, more than rails. But every trick is a project on its own. Like, I remember that super tall flat rail. I don't know if you could recall that. JF did 2 on, 2 out, and B-Mill was there too, and Frank Bourgeois. This is a project that took 2 days to build with the snowboarder, the like 6 of the snowboarder crew, our crew, 2 snowblowers. Like, it all comes together, even though that's not my favorite shot. The build of it was insane.
Yeah, I forgot about that, but I think that would be the craziest for me, because jumping off a roof that tall of a rail, it's gnarly, but then to do a 2 on that,
yeah,
you're jumping off blind. Like, what if you jump and you land 2 on your nose? You're falling off a big setup.
But what I meant by that was that everything comes as a whole. When you look at the project, you cannot believe that it really happened. Because when you start on the first setup of the year with JF, there was no snow. JF had not skied all summer, basically. And then you're asked to do the craziest shit. But then you're like, all right. And after a few months, you look at the video that's done and you're like, dude, it doesn't make any sense. And I'm saying this being behind the camera, not being the writer. I don't understand how they deal with so much stress.
You create something out of nothing, really. I was talking to Émile this morning about that there's always something when you start off your season that you kind of take the raw stuff.
Yeah.
You do a couple of days skiing, you do maybe 1 or 2 urban setups that are more relaxed. But Émile was telling me, well, when you're in real ski, you don't have that luxury because you're on a tight schedule and you need to get your shots. And he was telling me that his shots from his real ski, the 270 on to transfer switch up, that was his first setup. I was thinking, okay, your first time skiing in the year is doing that? Oh my God.
You have to have so much muscle memory, and I don't know. Like I said, I've never been in that area whatsoever. But following my brother this year was the most insane thing. Because being my brother, it was hard for me kind of to see this. I felt bad with JF sometimes because the spots were insane. I really was scared kind of for his health. But with my brother this year, I was like, dude, I never second doubted himself. I never said like, are you sure? Because I knew if he was going to do this, he was going to do this because he knew. So I didn't want to second doubt himself ever. But behind the lens, man, sometimes I was like, you are now crazy, man. For real, crazy.
What was the setup that was scaring you?
Everything. Like you said, having your first shot in the for the real ski, your second day skiing kinda is, even that is insane. But after that, you have to build up to huge setups, man. B-Mill dropped many stories off the roof of a building, landing down trannies, and so many big tricks that I don't even still understand.
Yeah, in the mini movie they did, he showed a bit more of his crashes that he had on the dam setup, and there's a thing of, that setup is really gnarly, but it's another thing of seeing that, he crashed hard a couple times and he still went back at it.
And that was the craziest part, because I was filming like from the far, facing the setup, I was filming from the far right side. And as we got there, the ice started melting, and I moved around one time and my foot went through the ice, and I was waist deep in the water, and I fucked up my foot pretty bad. So the entire time I was like hurting and shit, and like the ice was so thin where he landed every time. It was every time we're like, all right, now it's the time that he's gonna go into the river, like, and he kept going at it. He was wet. It was sketchy. That's one thing that you can't see. You see the shot, you're like, It wasn't my favorite trick, but not me that's saying this. Like, for example, someone that's saying, oh, that was not my favorite trick. But the surroundings of it, the guys had to go 2 days before build like the jump out of branches.
Yeah.
So
I think it's one of the sketchiest builds I've ever seen.
Dude, you have to stack up branches in order to make a flat jump like that's going pretty high up, and everything about that spot was fucked up. So Émile has that idea in his head and is hardly taken away from what he wants, I feel like. So if he wants something, that's because he thinks that it's possible, and he's a brilliant dude. My brother, he's so inspiring. But when he does, man, stuff like this, I'm like, I don't understand. Like, do your thing, I'll get the shot, but I don't understand. I
think his medal was really well deserved, but it kind of got overlooked. I don't know what was, like, it seemed like Houle got a lot of hype, that Mango got a lot of hype. And I think people didn't, like, when you talk about the context and people say, oh, that's not my favorite shots, and they don't realize everything that went into it. I don't think people realize how big everything he did was. Like his cork 450 onto a metal roof, that's so big.
Yeah.
And he does it so clean that it might be overlooked as saying, oh, well, yeah, that was a cool trick. It's like, no, that thing was humongous.
Yeah, and Mike Hornbeck wrote to me shortly after they had the podium finish, and he wrote to me and he was like, dude, that video was Canadian as fuck, and I understood kind of what he meant by kind of JF type big setups, going big, Houle and Mango, I like those guys. Houle goes big, Mango goes big too, but they're more into the new era of urban, which is not quite like Émile. Émile is like older stuff, big stuff, which is not, I don't take anything away from it. But it's less of the mainstream kind of thing. Like I said earlier in the interview, what Émile does is less accessible to people. A lot less accessible, because you're basically gonna die if you're not good at skiing.
Yeah.
If you try this stuff. Whereas I don't know if it was Mango or Houle going under a fence and like lazy out butter.
Houle did something of like going like kind of doing a zero switch, going on his back and then going back to switch.
I respect that, but to me, this is something that if you work a day on, you can get easily. It's not a diss whatsoever. It's just my view on urban skiing. Whereas the big stuff, like Frank Bourgeois and snowboarding, the biggest fucking hits you can do.
Yeah, there's definitely less consequences on, like, let's say that trick that we're talking about.
It's tech, but
there's the risk factor that's not there. That's all.
Yeah. And fairly, it's an opinion that is fair to any other sports too. That there's always different types of people that you like more or less.
And I think that's been a natural progression with people not buying ski movies as much, and kind of the focus, the monetary part not being that big into urban skiing, where guys have no incentive to jump off roofs.
True.
I think that's kind of a natural progression.
Yeah.
X Games is kind of the only thing that gives that, because there's the visibility, there's the medal, there's the money, the prize purse is kind of something.
It's a huge luck to have that contest for real, because it puts them on a. We stayed in Quebec all year, and you got an X Game medal, and you got the recognition that he deserves after all. So for that, it's the only contest that's out there to promote that in a way that's as cool as the big air at X Games, in my opinion, So that, they have that platform that's pretty sick. But again, being a part of that as well, for me is super, super cool. I like it.
And now it's time for another sponsor break. Treefort Lifestyles is a company based out of Oregon. They've been involved in the ski industry since their inception in 2011 when they made their first pair of suspenders for skiing. They produce some of the nicest accessories you can find out there for your adventure activities, whether you're going skiing, hiking, or traveling. I've worn their suspenders all winter, and I have to say I love them. They're stylish and they're so comfortable you forget you have them on in the first place. Go check them out at treefortlifestyles.com and use code Mayrand at checkout to get 15% off your order. Support companies that support skiing. Support Treefort Lifestyles. When you were younger, if I were to tell you that you would have 2 X Games medal, but as a filmmaker, what would have you thought?
First of all, I would have said, "What the fuck? There's gonna be a urban contest at X Games."
Yeah,
That would have been my first thought. But let's say that 10% of the score is for the video itself. And so, yeah, it's cool to have a medal, but people that are the judges of that have a better knowledge of just looking at a video and being like, I don't like it because of the song, because of the cuts. They'll understand the tricks and what's behind it before they see the edits. That's why that's only 10% of the score, and I think that's really, really fair, because let's say you're the best skier in the world, but you only found this dude to film your project that's average. It's not representative because the edit sucks or so that's cool that they do that, because it gives a bit more play and to be more fair towards riders.
But then after the judging side, a big part of the impact that this segment will have on the internet and on the culture has a big part to do with the filming, editing, and everything.
That's true. That's very true. And also, which is kind of sad and not 100% true. I contradict myself there, but if you are from the US, I feel like you may have a bit of advantage over the social media and who you're gonna reach. Whereas for B-Mill,
that's always the case for us.
Yeah.
It's always been.
It's hard as a Canadian coming from Quebec. There's not a lot of people, to be honest, if I try to think about it right now, that are still there. Phil, Bellinger is still there a bit. Vince, Gagne,
that are still relevant.
The crew
in the
of
industry.
people from Quebec that are still there, being Canadian and Quebecer.
Yeah,
not a lot of people,
Phil, ABM, Belmar, your brother.
Yeah,
there's a lot on the come up, but as we said, it's hard to make a name for yourself and stand out. Well, that's really the part, standing out.
And it's not going to be in an urban environment.
Yeah, well, it seems like they don't do it.
No.
When we were young, it was like kind of a thing you must do. And not that you must do, like everyone wanted to do it. Everyone was into it. Yeah. There's some kids that are still doing it, but they're not the same that are on the Quebec team. It's two separate groups doing two separate things.
Yeah. And I would not be able to say one name that's... Jacob Bellinger. Jacob Bellinger is the youngest, in my opinion, that's growing the best out of not being in the contest scene. He has his own style. He's known in the US as well a bit. People start to acknowledge his style.
You really see the line of influence. Like
kinda,
JF influenced you influenced your brother then influenced Jacob. Like there's a path.
Yeah, it's all toward that, for sure. And like I said, traveling, Jacob is put in B-Mill, not because he's my brother, but he knows a lot of people in the world. He's been to Rick's grandson in the North Pole. He's been on a bus trip to Slovenia, I think it was, like with the picture team. That kind of puts you in a different place as well. It's totally different, two vibes of skiing.
It's the relationships that you make with that. And your brother is one of the kindest dude I've ever met. So
for sure,
I don't think there would be one person he met that doesn't like him, because he's so genuine and so nice.
Yeah, and I feel like he does skiing because he truly loves it, and he does it for the right reasons, that are the reasons that he believes in, of course, because every reason to ski is good.
And now it's time for another sponsor break. Axis Board Shop is a ski and snowboard shop based out of Saint-Sauveur, Quebec, Canada. They've been in business since 2002 and have supported skiing since day one. From sponsoring numerous athletes to putting on competitions to helping out movie productions, they've done it all. Axis is the core board shop, and they've got everything that you might need this season. Check them out at axisboutique.com or go check out their shop in Saint-Sauveur. Support companies that support skiing. Support Axis Board Shop.
It's just a matter of what you want to do, you know. If you're starting to stress about how is my life going to be later, am I going to ski later, this is where I kind of drew the line for myself no, I don't want to struggle mentally because I'm not good enough at skiing, and I'm not going to make any money out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But like for Émile, Jacob, they still have a hope of going somewhere by doing what they love. Because man, like Phil is an example, but there's not many people. I could not say one person that is gonna take the lead of Phil in Quebec City. He's his own thing, and no one is even close to become Phil, you know, in its own way. So.
On one side, on the influence he has had, and then on another, the sponsor support he has had. Like, he definitely created that with his influence and his style of skiing, but then there's also the industry that gave back to him. Like, he has a pro model with Full Tilt, he has a pro model with Armada.
But let's say for Phil, he used to ski backcountry a lot too. Like back in the day, like he skied backcountry. He's done a lot of contests. He's done well in contests. He's done well everywhere. So he kind of proved himself where people need, unfortunately, proof of you being able to do certain things to be at that spot. And he really worked for it. So it's not like Phil has always been this urban dude that just does his thing and is recognized for it. Like, it took some years to build up, I'm sure. And for every skier in the world, you don't build yourself up in a matter of minutes. And you have to do something there's a reason why certain skiers were on top but never got the recognition from the people or the love from people that they kind of deserved, because the style wasn't there or the attitude wasn't there. If you talk to Phil, there's no way you're gonna hate him. He's not gonna tell you to fuck off anytime.
And when you look at the other influential guys, Tom Wallish, Henrik, they were all doing everything, doing edits, doing movies, winning competitions. It was like you couldn't ask them to do anything more. Like Henrik right now, or even in the past 10 years, due to our X Games, World Cups, movies, edits, he's everywhere. So
yeah, the best is to be on top of your game, which is not easy. But once you are like these guys, you have the control and you're able to make what you want, and that's why they're starting to create their own clothing brand, or they dissociate from brands that they used to be sponsored by, because you realize that you can have a certain control if you take over some certain stuff, if you have the power, of course, of the industry and the people that are watching you. But that's the way to go now, and that tells a lot about skiing. Is like when the biggest heads of the sport are taking matter in their own hands, whereas they're gonna start their own brand clothing companies. You're like, how is the sport really doing? You know, because those are the top guys. So that means there's not a deal out there that's interesting enough for them to look up for. So skiing is the greatest thing, but it's really, really complex. And
it's a spread out sport in terms of different niches, and then in terms of different geographical location. Like Armada are trying to appeal to people in Quebec, but also people in China and people in I don't know, Argentina. It's a hard thing to market.
Yeah.
We talked before on the podcast about when you have skiing off of your life, it's kind of a drug addict with nothing else. You had that happen with a crazy feet injury.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, the injury. I was a filmer at that point for JF, and that was the spring right after we had done the real ski with JF. And every year he would build a big jump at Stoneham, his own ski resort, so we could film. And so that was a big hip jump that he had gone over a couple times and led in the landing to clear over the hip. And so I followed him, and the snow started to be a bit sticky at this point, and I missed about a foot or two of I landed on the knuckle, basically a foot or two before the landing. But a hip is pretty steep, so I went pretty high up, and I exploded my left heel, my right heel, my left ankle, and other bones in my left foot. And so, of course, right then and there it was over. So I was in the ambulance. I went to the hospital. I stayed at the hospital for about a month.
A month?
Yeah.
That's long.
I had 2 surgeries there where they fixed my left heel with 12 bolts, my right heel with 10 bolts, and other bones with other screws. And then I pretty much knew from there that it was going to be hard to come back to skiing. When I came out of the hospital, I had to be 6 months in bed. After that, I did some wheelchairing as well. And then 6 months after that, I started walking slowly.
So you were 6 months without walking?
Yeah.
Because how was that mentally and, on the sur le moral?
It was pretty... it was hard. It was hard, but not understood yet. Because when something like that happens, you don't know how it's going to affect your future life so much. And so it was like an injury. I was living every day as every day, like every day by day at this point. But then I came back home, and I was in bed for 6 months, and I started working like crazy. I got a job for the political crew here in Montreal, and so I edited all the campaign for this guy that was ahead of the government here in my bed, like the entire time, like in my bed. I made a lot of edits in my bed, so I kind of kept my mind working still. And then like a few months later, when I started walking again, I moved into Montreal, and I worked all summer. I filmed, I edited, and then towards the fall, my heel started to hurt very, very, very much again. So I had to go get another x-ray, and my left heel was shattered again because the bones didn't collide together. So the screws were there, but they had come loose because the bone didn't stick together. And so I had to move back to Quebec once again to get another to get a bone graft. Now this time they took all the screws. I got a bone graft on my left heel, and then I had to be 4 months on crutches again. So it took a fair like three solid years of me being able to deal with that and to find my way. But like I say to my friends, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because before that I was just bumming around skiing, which is fun, cool, like, yeah. But at a certain point, age doesn't have a count, but I was maybe 26, I don't know, like starting to wonder what's gonna happen, because skiing for me was definitely not an option at this point to make money. That was for sure. And so you start to ask yourself, what am I going to do, you know? And I knew people in Montreal that were based off ski, that started from skiing too, that offered me to start work here and there, editing, filming and stuff. So honestly, the accident is what put me into the position where I'm in right now, where I'm living good because I work, and I work for something that I like. So it basically was the greatest thing that happened to me in a way where, you know, some people go to high school, go to cégep, go to university to figure out what they want to do in life. And I was put into this position where, yeah, I couldn't move for a bit, but then it put me into this position where I found my way. And now I'm super happy with it.
That's cool to hear.
Yeah.
But as a skier, your brother was telling me that skiing is not an option really for you anymore. Like you're hurting just doing a couple laps.
Yeah, weirdly, after I crashed, I tried skiing again, but of course my feet are much more different now, and I didn't get my boots really fit for my feet yet. So every time I go, I'm hurting, and it's not really possible, and I don't see how I can enjoy it anymore. So it kind of came off my mind, to be honest, to the point where now I almost wish I would live somewhere where there wouldn't be no snow. And that's true. And I would have never thought of that. But yeah, now I feel like if I can't ski to give myself some sort of adrenaline, or because I used to ski at a certain level, even if it's not jumping, it's skiing hard, going fast, and I can't do that anymore. So
yeah,
it's like if you're the best painter in the world and someone asks you to draw like stick figures all day long, I'm not sure you're gonna be happy with your life, you know. So I don't know, I just forgot about it.
Well, same thing happens to me when I'm like riding with like my in-laws, and they're all riding like the usual slope and going, and they see me go 110%. They're like, well, why are you so like going so fast? And I'm like, well, that's how she goes. Like,
gotta get it.
There's no other options really.
Yeah, and I find myself being kind of like that with not everything I do, but as soon as I have an hint of interest towards something, I'm gonna do it for sure, like 100%. And the other way around, if there's one bit that I don't like, it's gonna be hard to motivate me. So that's why I forgot about skiing. It's not even in my thoughts. I don't think about it anymore. And I found biking, and that's the greatest thing in my life right now, and that's what I want to pursue, you know. And my girlfriend, and we have plans for future life, and I think it's sad to say, but I'm not sad to say, but growing up is not always fun. But I feel good being where I'm at right now, so no stress whatsoever.
Oh, well, that's the best thing to hear.
Yeah. It's kind of classic, you know. You get older, you find a job and whatnot, but I didn't find the job where I'm not happy. I didn't find the girl which I'm not happy with. I'm here in Montreal, which is not my favorite city, but I can't complain about anything at all. I'm able to walk, man, and 40 years back, if I had done that, no way they were going to be able to fix me. Now I'm walking fine. No one is ever going to be able to say that what happened to me. So I'm lucky. It put me in a good spot. Even better than skiing if I look back, because I have furthermore years to live than I did skiing. But what I'm happy with is at least I had a chance to travel, to meet new people. That's the different part about being, yes, you can do a sport and be competitive and wanting to win, but once you forget about that and you realize all the opportunities that you have to meet people from every country in the world, really, and I'm sure you did the same. Like you've met a lot of people throughout skiing that are otherwise
and relationships that are deep relationships. Like, I don't know how to say better, but when you go through missions like you did with JF or Israel Ski, it's kind of remind me of people in reality shows when they're together for a month and they come out and they're like family.
Yeah.
And they explain that, well, what we lived was so intense, but it's kind of the same thing where it's not just like seeing a friend at school. You're like going through blood, sweat, and tears with a person. So.
And that's what makes real friendships as well, because this kind of a make or break. You know, you're gonna find out real fast if you're not inclined to be with someone. If you're not their friends, if you don't belong together, this is gonna show up because you have so many experience, and that's all through skiing. And it's insane. It's hard to look back. Like sometimes I look at my old videos and it seems like I've never done that. I have no like clear memory of that. It
kind of seems like another life.
It does seem like another life. And even like my girlfriend, she doesn't know one thing about skiing. She has no clue. Like she's like, oh, show me a video of you doing something. And I showed her the Sammy Carlson. She was like, what? You used to?
Yeah.
But
I had the same thing when I was like going back. I went back to school. Well, I didn't. Like I was pursuing school, and at some point doing my master's, I was with like kids do masters really fast. Like they end up their bachelor's degree and they go straight up to master's. So I was like maybe 5 years older than them. And I would tell them about what I was doing in the skiing world, and I would show them videos. And one, they didn't have a clue about what free skiing was. So first there's that. And then there's the age gap where they were like, well, that was a long time ago. So you were basically like 17, 18. And anyways, there's that whole thing of like, I was seeing it through their eyes. And I was like, yeah, it seems like it's in another life. It's really, it's a weird thing.
Yeah. I think I'm 29, and I think we've really been lucky to be in the era that we were in when we were younger. As much as the kids that love skiing nowadays, we used to do it in a different manner of ways. Like I have a hard time explaining this, but it just shifted so much that it's hard now for me to even relate to any of that. That's why it seems like a different story altogether, because you don't see the type of skiing that we used to do, and not the type of skiing meaning the style, but the events, the movies, I don't know.
Yeah,
it just seems all so different.
Big example for me is that IF3 would be in the Cinéma Impérial in Montreal, which I don't know how many seats they have, but I'd say close to 1,000 maybe.
Dude, the cleanest place.
An old big theater that would be jam-packed. Like it was sold out, and there were even people sitting in stairs, and that would be local people coming to see our amateur movies.
Yeah.
There was a drive in the scene that was kind of hard to relate if you weren't there at that moment.
Yeah. And depending on the city you were coming from, everyone knew who you were. Not like fans, but people were interested in those kind of things. Where like the past premieres that I've gone to in Quebec were more like lots of people wanting to party and not knowing at all what the movie was there. It's just like, there's a premiere, people are going to get wasted. And I was more about it than the scene back then. But again, I sound like an old man that's like, oh, back in the day, the shit was fucking great, you know? But I feel like it was definitely a different era that we were lucky to be a part in. And I was lucky to be a part in because, like I said earlier, I was not a contestant to be the best skier in the world. I had my thing going, yes. I had my fair part of fun there. But it was different. There's no way a skier like me could make it today. I don't think. Maybe
I'm idealist, but I would say, yeah, there's a way. But yeah, as we said before, it's harder.
Yeah, much harder.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Big up. So stoked. That's a great initiative. Like I told you earlier, it's crazy to see people really wanting to put efforts into skiing and in that kind of viewpoint, and inviting me too. Really, thank you, man.
Cheers.
Boom, boom. Bam.
Ciao. So this is it for episode 13. I hope you liked it. I really enjoyed discussing with Paul. He's a great dude who has done a lot in skiing, and I'm really looking forward to what he does next in the filmmaking side of things. Big thank you to this episode's sponsors, Access Board Shop, J Skis, Treefort Lifestyles, Dic Anns Restaurants, and Planks Clothing. See you next week.